This episode is brought to you by Trello, which is trusted by millions of brave souls around the world to help them keep track of all their projects and to-dos. Trello is the easy, free, flexible, and visual way to manage your projects and organize anything. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life, so if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Today we get to talk with Bari Tessler. Bari is a financial therapist, mentor coach, and mama-preneur. Bari has this gentle, embodied center approach which weaves together personal, couple, and creative entrepreneurial money teachings into a complete tapestry. And it's really pretty cool how she does this. She's the author of the book called The Art of Money, and she's the founder of a global year-long money school by the same name. Both the book and her program integrates money healing, money practices, and money maps into it. Her work has been featured on Oprah.com and the Huffington Post and in the U.S. News and World Report and Reuters Money and the Fiscal Times and Experience Life Magazine, Yogi Times, Best Self Magazine, and Emerging Women. She and I had such a great conversation. I really loved it. There is so much ground we covered, and I know I personally needed a good week to digest everything she and I discussed. So brace yourself. It's really good. Today, she and I start talking about where she learned about this concept of value, self-valuation, and how we measure and exchange value interpersonally. We also share our own respective stories of having to make super tough decisions to walk away from something, a really big something, when it's just absolutely not right. We talk about how money and wealth is never a quick fix. We talk about what it means to feel your decisions with your body, and we talk about a lot more too. This conversation automatically puts Bari onto my wall of heroes, and I'm pretty sure that by the end of this, you will agree with me. Let's get on into it. Are you ready for some bare naked bravery?
I'm ready.
So I am so curious about your story with value. Specifically, what were some of your low moments with value?
Okay. So let's see. I have to say that this is important for me to say. So growing up, I really, when people ask me, what did you want to be? And then I'll lead into value because it's all connected. I wanted to be a solid gold dancer Okay. I don't know if you know what that is. I'm a bit older than you, but that was like my first thing. I'm going to be a solid gold dancer. Second thing as a preteen was I'm going to be a businesswoman. Had no idea what kind, but my father was in business, so I wanted to be like him and also nothing like him, right? I was working that out. And then as a teenager, early 20 something, I realized I wanted to add psychotherapy in the mix as well. And I started going to my own therapy and figuring it out,
What made that transition happen?
into starting my own therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I was 16, 17, and I'd say half extroverted, half introverted. And teenage years, I was very social. I was pretty wild. I was very wild. And I was working stuff out. I was angsty. I was sad. I was angry. And I wanted to understand the personas that I was playing. I was having fun playing them. They also really pained me. And so I asked my parents if I could go to therapy. And the only therapy we knew of was talk therapy. That's all we knew. And they sent me to a male therapist. Now, where I was as a teenager, going to a male therapist was just kind of like a game for me. It was, we were not going to get into the real stuff because a lot of my issues were around men and guys and playing games and working out my sexuality. And so it just, but that's where I started, was with a man in talk therapy. And, it was interesting. It was good, but it didn't really get me to where I really wanted to go. Which then led me to realizing that I need to use some kind of other modality as a therapy. And so also as a teenager, I would go into my room, shut the door, and play loud music and dance out my emotions, no matter what it was, all of them. And then I could come out of my room and then articulate to my parents what the heck was going on. Like, what was I feeling? And I could express it with words. So I just needed other channels, other modalities to my unconscious, to my emotions. And so early in my 20s, I was living in Israel after undergrad. So undergrad still had no idea what I was going to do.
Just for funsies? You were just there?
Just for funsies. Because where I grew up, that's what you did. There was no choice. It was an expectation. There wasn't, oh, hey, you want to go travel, or hey, you want to work, or hey, you want to, where I grew up, everyone just went into college.
Yeah.
Right. So there's, I grew up in a middle class family, and there was a lot of generosity, and then there's a lot of unspoken conditions and unconscious conditions that were figured out after I did something that they didn't like, So went to undergrad, basically partied and was figuring myself out. I was studying women's studies and African American studies, and because that connected for me. And then I remember when Audre Lorde came to speak, I was 20 years old or 19. She blew me away. And so there are moments like that. After that, I went to Israel, and I went to Israel to understand my lineage and what it meant that I was born into a Jewish family. But I was also telling my father, fuck you, because he wanted me to go to Japan. And I had taken Japanese for a few summers in a row, and he wanted me to eventually work in business with him. So there was no, I'm not doing that. That's not me. And he basically said, you're ruining your life. When I came back from Israel, he basically said that was the best thing you ever did for yourself. I'm so impressed. Which was pretty amazing.
Wow, good.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. But when I was in Israel, I was running on a kibbutz, and I'm not a runner. I'm a dancer, hiker, but running is really not my thing. But I was running for this period of time on this kibbutz, and suddenly I got this zap of, I'm going to integrate therapy with dance. I've been a dancer my whole life, and there's this therapy thing, and I'm going to put them together. And oh my God, I made up my field, or I made up this whole new field. And, I get to Jerusalem and realize I didn't make up anything, that there's graduate programs in dance, movement therapy, somatic psychology. And that's how I then made my way to Boulder, Colorado to train in somatic psychology and get my master's. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were in Israel, giving your dad the middle finger,
Yeah.
What did you learn about value? And doing that is a really brave thing, especially when you come from a family. I feel like our families are somewhat similar in that standing up to authority is a really big deal.
It is and it isn't, because I also verbally sparred with my father a lot growing up. And so, I know people that grew up in a family where they couldn't ever stand up for themselves, or they'd be squashed. I would have been squashed if I didn't stand up for myself in a really strong way. So there's a lot of love. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's there's a lot of love, and then there was also a lot of yelling and fighting and swearing and me standing my ground. So there was me challenging my father's authority. He was just really strong and really tough.
Yeah.
And really powerful. Yeah. In Israel, what did I learn about value? I mean, I feel like the value lessons came for me more in my 20s and my 30s. My 20s being steeped in graduate school training to be a therapist. I loved it. And I love that deep work. I mean, you don't train to be a therapist unless you need to do your own work, I think. And you need to do your own deep work to be a good therapist.
Right.
So we were required to be our own case studies, which I loved. So I did that. And I worked in the mental health field, and I worked in hospice, and I led authentic movement groups for young women. And all during that time, I still had no idea how I was going to create a livelihood or a life based on my skill sets or my gifts or my uniqueness or my quirkiness or, I had no idea. I just was kind of on the path of follow the chocolate crumbs and do your good work and it will lead to something. But I was terrified. I really had no idea. So for me, there was a moment when my student loan came due. That was, a terrifying moment of, I don't have a relationship to money. Bank statements come in, I throw them away. What is my relationship to money? I don't have one. This has been the biggest missing piece in my education.
If that terror was a cloth, what texture would it be? Cloth or like object feeling?
I feel like what I call it is a cloak of shame. It was a black velvet robe.
Uh-huh.
I wanted it to be the color I'm wearing, this like red, this like burgundy red color, but
to match your Frida Kahlo earrings that you're wearing right now.
Well, these are kind of like
those are so fabulous, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, she's been around for a while. It was more just like, I don't know how to do this. I'm not smart at math, so I can't do this money thing. I can't learn a bookkeeping system. I have no idea how to take what I thought was such an odd skill set at the time and quirkiness into the world. I never set foot in the corporate world. I knew that wasn't my place, and I've had a lot of friends that did at that time. And, they all left college and focused on making a lot of money and having a regular job. And I was like, see ya, I'm moving to Israel, and then I'm moving to Boulder, and I'm training to be a therapist, and that takes years, So there was certainly this, I don't know how to, so here's an image. I'm in graduate school, and someone's leading a movement group, and I'm on the floor crying because I don't remember what my value is or what my worth is or what I've come here to do. I don't remember. And it's so painful. So I was probably 26, or so. The school loan came due around 28 when I graduated. That's when I started dabbling in learning Quicken and Excel, which came out of nowhere. And then someone teaching me QuickBooks and these things I never thought I could do. And I thought my topics as a therapist would be sexuality, sensuality, body, food, grief, death, all of those. And then I never imagined that my doorway, my topic, my theme would be our relationship to money and using that as a doorway into mindfulness. But I'll give you a few more pieces about value because I've had some biggies. So since I started doing my money work, I was watching the themes and the threads, and it took me a while to realize value was one of the biggest themes from day one for myself, for my community, certainly for way more women, but some of the men too. And, I just started slowly offering my work in small groups over and over, 10-person groups, then 20-person groups. But this was years of small groups. And then, now this year was 400 people for me, value is like there's all this internal work that needs to be done around who am I, who am I not, what am I good at, what do I suck at. I remember one of my, not really a mantra person, but sometimes they just come, and so I'm 28 years old and I'm like walked out of a dance class and I'm in the back crying and I'm saying all I need to be is me, nothing more, nothing less. All I need to be is me, nothing more, nothing less. I don't need to look like anyone else. Don't need to have anyone else's body. I don't need to sound like anyone else or talk like anyone else. And I was just trying to come into myself, who I am, who I'm not. Internal value work is so much about learning to say no, what I call an elegant no, and boundaries and on and on and on. The external part of value for me has been around growing my business and has been around creating a business model that honors my values of family and health and all of that. And it's taken years. So here's one of my big value failures where I learned so much from it. So it's 7 years into my business. I'm 38 years old and I was very healthy at the time. And I remember that well. And I remember I always was hoping that one day Sounds True Publishing House would call me, right? They're always on my radar, like just in my visioning mind that one day they would call me. And so they did. And they said, you're a money gal and we would love to do, I don't know if it was 11 CDs or 13 CDs. And we want to fly you out to our studio in Boulder and you're going to record your teaching in your classes. At that time, I think I was doing maybe 3-month classes. Maybe I was doing a 6-month class at that time with 50 or 60 students, right? So I was teaching all the time. I used to teach 4 classes a week and so I know how to speak and teach. This is what I do. And so basically we signed the contract. They fly me out. Again, I remember I was really healthy. I remember the clothes that I was wearing, preparing for the studio like it mattered what clothes I was wearing in the studio. It didn't, but I remember this. And I get there and we get all set up in the studio. And I'm in the room alone and there's like this big glass wall with them behind it, recording the 2 people, the director and this other person. And I start speaking and maybe I speak for about an hour and then I just stop and I try again and I try again and again and again and again. And I can't do it. I can't talk to myself alone in a room. And we try again one more day and I can't do it. So it was so we canceled the contract and it was one of the most heartbreaking moments of that's it, I'm done, I suck, I can't do my work, I'm not doing my work anymore. I just went into quite a tailspin.
I can only imagine I can't imagine because I think we've all have been in a similar kind of moment of shit has completely hit the fan and we can no longer continue.
We can no longer continue as is. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is so much emotion caught up in that.
I mean, I was really like, not literally flat on the floor, but I just was heartbroken. And I was questioning everything, questioning my value, questioning my work, even though I'd been doing it for 6-7 years and it was growing in a nice way. So what happened was I remember getting on the phone with my mom. And she said to me, remember Loretta Lynn in The Coal Miner's Daughter? Remember how she could never sing to cameras or sing to a big audience and they always had to turn her around and place her kids in front of her and she would sing just to them. And that's how she did her thing. And it was like light bulbs went on of, oh, my students weren't there. My group wasn't there. My people weren't there. I was sitting trying to talk to myself alone in a room. I'm not theoretical in that way. I don't have that much to say. You give me questions. You tell me what's going on. I'm really good at working with people, doing the therapy, doing the coaching. And my God, do I have the practices and the tools and so it wasn't any live engagement. So what I realized was that I didn't know how to set myself up to thrive. I didn't know how to claim my value and own it and to fully step into it, which would have been, I would have had a group. I just would have set it up in a really different way.
One of the things that keeps coming up in all of these interviews that I get to do is bravery happens when you give yourself the boundaries and the freedom to do it your own way.
Right. So I want to tell a follow-up story of how I succeeded. I mean, a story of value where I succeeded, but if I hadn't have failed
Right.
in this way, I wouldn't have had the insights and the awareness to know, wow, I really did not set myself up. I didn't know really what my value was at that time or how to own it and claim it and make it happen. And, I think that's where age and maturing and falling down and getting back up and milking it and really learning everything you can. That's what comes from it, you know? So fast forward, I mean, 6 weeks after that so-called failure, which for me, failure is like, it's such a strong word. I usually don't use it, but I took myself off track, really off track. And I needed to get back on track. And that's what that showed me. I wasn't on my own track. And I went into more shame. And instead of like, oh, I know who I am and who I'm not, I fully didn't know it at the time, even though someone named that the material in my body of work wasn't mature enough. And I hated hearing that.
That was the title of it?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. The
They just called it that.
No, the director said your body of work wasn't mature enough. This was the Sounds True publishing.
Oh, but
audience.
still, even
No.
saying that is...
No. I was terrible. It was awful. I know. It pissed me off. I was like, well, screw you. But so 6 weeks later, I got pregnant with my very first child and only child. And it was also that year, in my 38th year, after 38 years of not wanting to have children and saying it's not my path. I did wake up that year, at the beginning of the year, realizing that my only next step was to have a child, to have a boy named Noah. And it kept coming through over and over and over and over. So this happened at the end of the year. This also, all year I was dropping little seeds to my husband. We were together 7 years. We'd signed that we're not having kids contract, So literally within 5 to 6 weeks of this so-called failure, being off track, I conceived really quickly, like first try, first we're doing this. So in any journey, there's like really hard things. There's really beautiful things. So that was that. So then I was not sleeping and being a mama, and I'm still, now my child's almost 8, he didn't sleep until 3 and now he's a great sleeper. But fast forward to 2 years ago. So this is 7 years after this experience.
And during those 7 years, you were still teaching, doing your money therapy stuff, right?
Yes. But what I did was I made it very simple again. When my son came, we had such a health crisis because of, conception was like first try, pregnancy great. Then we had a hell of a labor. And so I was in recovery for quite a while. So instead of working 40, 50, 60 hours and having a whole team of bookkeeping trainers and financial coaches and me teaching my courses, I let go of all of that, let go of my business partner, and went to 10 hours a week. What can I do in 10 hours a week? What do I love the most? What's most lucrative? I'd never asked that question before. And I was crazily sleep deprived. So what I could do was teach a group class maybe twice a year with a crazy bun and me not sleeping and do the best that I could. And so I got really simple again. And then by age 3, I created a home study, and I almost made the same mistake. Is that sounds true? I almost recorded it at home by myself. And then I realized, what am I doing? I have a class that I'm teaching of 60 people for 6 months. I can ask them if they would give me the honor of letting me record this. And they all did. And that was the content for my home study program, that we were able to produce. So that was definitely a small success story. I'm like, I'm going to do it myself, and we did. And then at age 3, 4, 5 with Noah, one of my favorite articles is like the stages of being a mommy-preneur. I'm now a mama-preneur because my child's just turned 8. I
don't have kids, but one of my favorite podcasts right now is called Boss Mom with Dana Malstaff. She's just so quirky. She's got some phenomenal advice for mamapreneurs.
I'm writing that down. Thank you.
She's really good. But I just love hearing about it because I'm completely not in that frame of mind. My younger sister has 2 little ones, and I always think that she is so brave for having done that because I haven't done it.
Yeah.
And running a business and making that shift from full-time business owner, business lady to 10 hours a week boss lady really, really gets you to prioritize. It forces you to prioritize.
It forces you to know your no's and yeses. Like your time becomes so precious that all those tea dates that I used to do for years and years were like such a clear nope. Nope. Sorry. No. Yeah, it put a lot of things into perspective. And then, my God, what I was able to do in 10 hours, income went way down, certainly for those first 2 years. But by year 3, 4, 5, then what I was able to do is I started increasing to 15 and then 20 hours was way more than what I used to do in 40, way more, because I got so clear. And yeah, it was really brave. I mean, it was brave to change my mind at 38 years old that suddenly I do want to have a child. And that was brave. It was brave, the labor we had. And I really wanted a home birth. And at hour 12, I put on my orange sundress and said, we are going to the fucking hospital. Those were my exact words. And that my midwife didn't call it. My husband didn't call it. I did. And I knew something was wrong because I know how to get into my body.
Yeah.
And we got there, and within 30 minutes, I was hemorrhaging and my placenta abrupted. But I felt empowered because I made the call and I got us there in time, and that could have turned out really bad.
Yeah.
And when the doctor came in offering me C-section, somehow it felt like an option. Obviously it wasn't, but I really felt empowered by everything of that. So yeah, there's so much bravery in being a mama. There's so much bravery in doing your own thing, being a creative entrepreneur. And to come to this other story was when I decided to write the book. And it was basically, day one, I was giving a talk in my methodology and people would say, well, when's the book? So for 15 years, 13, because 2 years ago I got clear it's time, I would say it's coming or soon or one day, and so 13 years later, I finally said it's time. It's really time. And I'd found my co-writer. I've been working with co-writers for years. So that was another brave thing. So I love to speak. I love to teach. I come up with content nonstop, right? And I love working with everyone. Writing for me, writing a 150-page thesis for my graduate program, I had to be locked away, eating chocolate like all day and night long, and taking a sabbatical from my job to finish that because it is so hard for me to write. And so I just, at some point, didn't even know co-writing was possible. And at first thought, well, that's kind of embarrassing. Like I should be able to do all of this, and I should learn how to be a good writer. And I had my child and again, realized I can't do everything and started co-writing 9 years ago. And so I found my third co-writer 5 years ago, Angela Rains. And I knew she was the one. I knew she was, she does my work. She does the Art of Money every year. She's steeped in it. She does her own meditation and on and on. So 2 years ago, we decided to do the book. And even just writing the book proposal is an enormous undertaking, right? And at the very end of us finishing the book proposal, a publisher reaches out to me, which is dream come true, right? So again, I always like to say in any journey, there's going to be hopefully beautiful moments, easeful moments, and then there's going to be really, really, really challenging moments. And so that was fabulous. They reached out to me. It was the right publisher. It's Parallax Press, small publisher. 6 months after I signed with them, their new distributor is now Penguin Random House. I have the biggest publisher and a small publisher coming together. So I'm in all the independent bookstores where I do my book readings, and we're in Barnes & Noble. It's really the best of both worlds. So that's all the good stuff, right?
That's phenomenal.
That's phenomenal, right? That's all phenomenal. That's all phenomenal. So the value piece came after we had 6 months to write the manuscript. We send in 120,000 word manuscript. I think it's much bigger than they imagined, much meatier. And I had known of my editor because she was the one who saw my guest post on her friend's site and sent me to Rachel's desk and said, I think this is our money gal. And so the editor brought me in. So I always felt a good connection with her. I didn't know that you could or should ask the editor, so how do you like to edit? Do you like to make it better? Do you like to take what is and improve upon it? Do you like to completely do your own thing, whatever you think is right? Do you, and I didn't know. So we send it off. We wait 3 to 4 weeks. We get it back. And it is, the soul is ripped out ripped out. My husband kept coming up with funnier and funnier metaphors. He said it was Frankenstein. The head was ripped off and put in the arm. The arm was ripped off and put in a leg. The da da da. Like it was just completely rearranged my methodology that I've been teaching for 15 years.
What was that like?
It was awful. I mean, it was awful. It was heartbreaking. It was so sad. It was heartbreaking and so sad and awful. And I read it, and then my husband read it, and then my co-writer read it, and then her mother read it. And luckily, we all had the same experience. We couldn't even finish it. They changed, the voice was changed. It sounded like a man. It sounded like a traditional money management book that's been written hundreds, if not thousands of times. We don't need another one, or I'm not going to be writing that kind of book, right? There are some good ones, but that's not what I do. And it was awful.
That kind of book doesn't pair well with dark chocolate.
No, it doesn't. I go to those books. I have them on my shelf for, all the basics on savings and debt stuff and investment, and to get their opinion, and to get some techniques. And I obviously needed a much more creative, loving, compassionate, fun, savvy approach. So that was a moment where I certainly went into like trauma. And what I mean by trauma is like I was shaking. I felt really intense energy moving in my body. I didn't sleep that much that night. My only option was what I thought was to walk away and choose to self-publish. I called my attorney. I said, how can I walk away from this? He said, well, you just don't agree to the edits and you have to give back your advance, And I did not see any other path or option or anything. I wrote the letter of a lifetime, and this is all the value piece. I wrote the letter of a lifetime with my husband's help saying, this is not my book. This may be your book. This is not my book. And I know my work at this point, and I will not put my name on this. I cannot go forward with this. You cannot move my methodology around just because you think people will get bored if we don't get to the practical soon enough. You cannot change my voice. Now, I can compromise. I can negotiate. I can, the way it was presented and 50,000 words taken out, and it was just, and all just basically this how it should be, was so not okay for me that I was able to stand in my value, unlike I have ever done before. And point by point of what I would have been willing to go negotiate and what absolutely not. And I sent off that letter thinking I'm walking away. And 15 minutes later, Rachel, the head of the publishing firm, calls me and said, Bari, I'm heartbroken. Your letter made me so sad. I would never publish anything you don't love. I would never do anything that you don't want to put your name on. And I'm getting you a new editor. And then 3 days later, she said, because of timing, because we wanted to meet some deadlines, she said she was going to edit it. And she hasn't edited in years because she runs the whole publishing firm now, but she's been Thich Nhat Hanh's editor for years and years and years. And then we were able to, with her editing and with my co-writer and rounds and rounds and rounds of line editing, bring it to the classic book that I am so proud of, but it was not looking good. And it was, one of those like, wow, I've done years of work of really who I am and who I'm not. And I might have acquiesced. I probably would have acquiesced years ago, or the project would have just failed like it did. Mm-hmm. And this one, I was able to follow through and take through even to the end, when at the very end, my publisher, who's doing the editing, and my co-writer were having a little disagreement about a voice thing and details. And, I had to make the final decision. I had to make the final call. And there was just a lot of that.
I've done a similar thing with albums, like investing a ton of time into an album and a set of songs, and then getting to a point with the collaborator that I was working with where I just was like, no, this is not working. Very similar situation. And there was a very sleepless night where I just walked downstairs. I was in a big house with a bunch of roommates at that time. And I was downstairs in the living room, just like crying into the couch at 2 a.m. going, if we do the drums tomorrow, the album will have to get finished. I just know that. Like, I know that about the whole series of the way it goes. And I had to pull the plug because I was like, I can't.
Yes. Yeah.
And it felt awful. It felt
Yeah.
so bad. But you pick yourself up and you find the new solution when you value yourself enough to say
Yes.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
gives you the opportunity to find a new solution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that the book editing process too is so much of a back and forth. It has to be that like no, yes, no, yes.
Exactly. There needs to be a conversation, a
Yes.
dialogue where we compromise, where we don't, what you negotiate, what you don't. Yeah, the way the editor, Rachel, at the end was like, she would present something and say, this is what I would do, but you make the final call. Okay. That's so much different than a complete doctoring
Right.
of a manuscript that you don't even see the voice or the work, the body of work in anymore or anything.
Yeah. Putting together a podcast was a crazy idea I've had for a long while. One of the reasons I put it off so long was all the details, scheduling, to-dos, emailing, and editing processes required to publish a single podcast episode. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And Trello might be the single reason why you're listening to this podcast right now. It helped me set up a simple way to visualize the production process of every episode. And I'm a visual learner, so spreadsheets don't always do the trick with me. Trello will help you manage any project you've got going on: family grocery lists, working with your assistant, brainstorming ideas, collaborating on that film project, or researching that ant farm hobby. Trello is simple on the surface, but has everything you need to get stuff done. Post comments for instant feedback, upload files from your computer, Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, add checklists, labels, due dates, and so much more. And the notifications make sure you always know when important stuff happens. It's free, and you can sign up by going to barenakedbravery.com/Trello. TRELLO. I'm curious, going from valuing yourself to how other people value your work.
Yeah. I feel like because I haven't been a part of many creative projects, you have, right? Way more than me. There's how do you own your value and claim it and stay in your integrity and really stay with the vision of your body of work or what, through a creative endeavor. There's that.
Yeah, it's a learning curve. That's for sure.
There's a huge learning curve, right? So there was still something new about that with me. The other body of work that I was learning how to value over and over and over had been the groups that I teach or the private financial therapy, which I'll 10 slots at a time every 2 years. And mostly I love groups because for so many reasons, but because I want people from a wealthy background, a middle class background, and working class background all in the same room, whether it's virtual or small groups live. I want us all in the same room, really getting that no matter what background we come from, economic background, religion, etc., we all have issues. We all have strengths, we all have challenges, we all have things to overcome. And we have all sorts of myths and projections and beliefs. Well, if I come from a wealthy family, if I did, then I'd have no issues. And, I love some of my key interviews with someone who came from a wealthy family or someone and what they had overcome, and someone who came from a working class family that she called a poor family and what she'd overcome. So for me, that's what I've been working on valuing, because as a therapist, I was basically trained to go create a private practice, to see 10 clients a day and get paid for my hourly time. And that never worked for me for so many reasons, because I'm very sensitive. I knew I could never see 10 clients a day, nor did I just didn't think that was the right path for me, but I had no idea how else I was going to create anything else or what else was out there. So even learning to set up groups and doing that and price that. And then, so for me, the business model has been so important for me, and finding a business model where I can be as generous as I can with my work and content and support, whether I have this year we have 5 TAs. I have tons of guest teachers. Or how can I be the most generous with my content and price it in a way that works for the majority of my community, and then also honors that I need quiet time, I need to take care of my health and be with my family, on and on and on. So business models, I've been trying to crack those nuts for years. And
tough nuts to crack.
They are. And it's one of my favorite things to do, even though I'm not a business coach. I really consider myself a financial therapist, but I work with so many creative entrepreneurs. So I'm always trying to help people think out of the box. What other ideas? What other revenue streams? And I've had 2 business models I'll just name that moved me into a more sustainable place. And the first one was I was doing bookkeeping. I was leading groups. I was starting to do financial therapy. And there was that. And the bottleneck came by my time, right? Like, how many sessions can I actually do? And I remember, where I was hovering as far as income and time and all of it. And women started coming to me saying, hey, I'm an accountant in the corporate world, but I'm doing yoga training on the side. I want to be in your team. Or I'm getting my master's in therapy and I have a bookkeeping practice on the side. I want to be in your team. And I was like, what team are you talking about? And so it was happening so much because I would give these free talks on my conscious bookkeeping methodology, which I now call the Art of Money, over and over and over and over. And so I started creating a team of bookkeeping trainers and financial coaches.
So you created the employees before the product, basically?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And wonderful.
Well, but I knew what they were, I knew we needed people to train people on Quicken and QuickBooks and any of these systems, right? I knew people wanted to learn how to budget, which I call a money map or map of intention or plan. And so, I basically was like, okay, these are the roles, right? This is who is going to fill them. Now I just need to keep giving my talks, which I love to do, my 2-hour talks that were free. And then people would come talk with me afterwards or get on my list. And I would say, great, go to this trainer. And under the umbrella of conscious bookkeeping, we worked out a percentage that felt really good. Now, I remember there was this one coach who I think she would get 66% and the trainer would get 33%. And I reversed that because her model felt crappy to me. So my trainers got 66% and I would get 33%. And that felt so good to me. It felt so good to the women. It was a lovely, lovely business model. And we did that for, about 4 years.
Yes. I really appreciate your application of the supply and demand, like traditional economy, supply and demand. Like usually that's based out of tension. Those 2 crosshairs are based out of tension and scarcity. Yours is like, I feel like your crosshairs are motivated by generosity and enough.
So I really appreciate that. And do you know the Enneagram at all? Yeah. For a while, people were saying, oh, you're a 3-3. And I'm like, I'm absolutely not a 3, but I have a very strong 3 wing, but I'm a 4. So everything has to start or come from within. You too. Okay. Of course. Right. So that's why you can name it that way. And I'm going to tell the second business model because I love how you're narrating it and describing it afterwards. So the second business model happened. So Noah it's all about where's my family at, what stage and phase and all that too. Exactly what you're saying. And so this was 4 years ago. And it was a year where I had the home study program. I was sleeping. Again, my child was 4. And I started doing like a 3-month coaching program. And they all use the home study, right, as the material. And I was opening that program every few months. And then my husband was opening his online program, Tech Husband, every few months. And we were going crazy. It went from like I was just doing registrations for years and filling my courses to now we're in this intense, yucky launch thing. And I would launch and he would launch and I would launch and he would launch. And all of a sudden I was like, this is not working for me. We're also making money in 3-month increments. We want to see if we can break that ceiling and make money over 6 months or over a year or, move beyond whatever money ceiling that 3-month timeline was. And I went in and inside and I, like in a flash, realized that I had all the material for a year-long program. I had matured. I was ready for it to handle it. I felt my community was ready for it. The whole vision of the guest teachers, the content, I already had it. I just needed to reach out to new guest teachers to interview. And I'm going to interrupt you. Yeah.
I'm noticing I interrupt people a lot more than
Come on
I would
in.
like. However, I know that at certain points in my life, I have often wondered about people like yourself who have said, "Oh, let me get into my body and answer that question for you."
Yeah. Yeah.
What the hell does
What the
that
hell does
mean?
that
I mean,
mean?
I know
Okay.
what it means now, but how would you describe that? Because that kind of in a flash answer only comes from practicing the getting into the body.
Okay. So good. And then we'll
From my
finish this.
experience.
Yeah, then we'll finish the story. Great. So
For sure.
so it all goes back to, I'm after the kibbutz where I was running and realized I'm going to be a dance therapist and study this thing. Soon after, I'm in Chicago, back in Chicago, applying for Naropa and there for the year. And I decide to start doing authentic movement groups. And authentic movement is a movement meditation practice that comes from Mary Whitehouse. She was a modern dancer, studied Carl Jung, and there's a third thing I can't remember, and was meditating, and put these all together. And so there's a witness, there's movers, and you go into a space, there's no music at all, and you lie on the floor, stand up, run around the space. You're supposed to close your eyes and listen to impulses and follow them into movement and sound. So what happens when I start doing authentic movement is I have no idea how to listen quietly and follow impulses into movement and sound. It's like, what the heck is that? I start doing dance moves. I want to show the witness, the teacher, how good of a dancer I am. And she keeps stopping me and saying, come back to the beginning and start again. It's not about that. Just start. It's just trying to find your natural impulses. It could be moving your finger. It could be. So I remember at that time one day, like having an epiphany of suddenly realizing I could tell if I was full in my body or if I was hungry. So that was huge for me because I had overridden those impulses for so long. I tried to undereat, but I enjoy food and way too much. I was much more of an overeater. Like that was more of my thing. And so to actually know in my body when I was full, when I was not, when I was hungry, was like, oh my God, was that an incredible moment. And it's just continued. Then I spent all of my 20s learning how to listen to my body again, or for the first time, really. I mean, I was a dancer, so I talked about like dancing my emotions, but really starting to understand what am I feeling on a physical level, sensation level, emotional level, and on and on and on. So it's just stopping and pausing and like starting to listen to your body's messages. There's a lot of wisdom in here, and not just making decisions just purely from your mind, getting that your mind and your body are fully connected. They really are. And I know that's like not for everyone, and it takes years and it takes practice.
Right.
And it takes, not listening and overriding and ignoring. And, we all store things in our body, and we all have mild to large trauma being a human at this time. And so there's so much wisdom in here, that talking is just gets you so far. And there's like, what is that little twitching happening in my toes? Or why do I feel like I'm going to throw up? Or I'm getting such a clear no to this, and yet I'm going to say yes. Why the hell what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, just like our body knows. But yeah, it may take a while to remember that again or to listen.
Let's go back to the second business model. You closed your eyes, you had a flash.
I closed my eyes. It was interesting because normally I hike every day, and that's kind of, I ask my questions, I get answers. I go out there with the trees and nature, and I just ask and I ask my questions and I get answers. So normally that's where it happens. But this time we were in St. Louis in my husband's parents' house. So I didn't have my mountain to go to, so I think I had to like lie in bed and realize I can do it just lying in bed. Or I used to do it in the bath, like just tap in, and literally just got a flash of the year-long program, realizing that it will again be the most generous with my content, like the most generous I've ever been. All my old interviews and everything's going to be stored in the library, plus the monthly material, plus the call with me, plus the interviews. It just, was, and time wise, energy wise, this really works because it's a lot of material I've already created or some new parts. But the call is once a month for 2 hours, which I love. Then there's this private secret Facebook group I can go in and out as I can. So it was just,
well, it's also was a decision that was built upon years and years and years of investment.
no doubt, no doubt. I could have not come to a year-long program right off the bat. This was years and years and years of hard work. I'm all for hard work. I am like where people say like I was taught to work hard and I'm trying to like learn about ease. Now, I love the magic moments. I love the ease moments, but I've worked my ass. I've worked very hard.
And that's one of the things I really appreciate about your message with money and value is that it is not an overnight thing.
No, it's not a quick fix. It's not an overnight thing. The magic comes, but after lots of hard work or lots of baby steps, lots and lots and lots of, yeah, I've had a few people over the years come to me and go, okay, let's do one session and you're going to fix me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to fix anything. And this is like learning a framework and tools and practices that you live and breathe. And, you know, this was stuff that we should have been taught from grade school and up in small increments, how to have a relationship to money on a practical, emotional, psychological, spiritual level. The last piece of this business model was the price point. And here was like the final thing for me. So for years, it was like, raise your prices, charge what you're worth. You've read my stuff. I think that's all bullshit. I mean, I'm swearing a lot in this one. So like, we're going to have to put that adult,
That's fine with me.
So, charge what you're worth. We could never charge what we're worth. We can never put a number on our value and our worth. Right. Ever, ever, ever. We are born a unique, worthy human day one. That's, then we do need to interact with the marketplace and the physical world and price things and put a number on things. But it's not charge what you're worth, and it's not always increase your fees. That's not what's going to show the value or your worth. Now, with my private sessions, I have raised them over the years, and I've kind of been at the same place for a while, but I did keep raising them. With this, though, I went from a 3-month group that was about a mid-price point. I think it was $550, $600 for 3 months. I knew that I wanted to lower my price point because I had a sense I would get a lot more people. And I had a sense if I get a lot more people, it's going to be a lot more lucrative and sustainable overall. And so I went from that $550, $600, $650 price point for 3 months to $88 a month for 12 months. Now, overall, it's more for the year, but it's a lot more time. But the monthly price point made it so much more accessible for so many more people that we went from 50, 60 students to 320 students in the first year. Yeah. And, the entire business model came together as far as time, energy, resources, price points, my values, being as generous as possible. And it's now I'm about to we're going into our 5th year of it. And it's now my favorite teaching model and business model, even more than the other one with the team. But at that time, that was wonderful too. So just to know that in my 15 years, I've had a few years where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying everything and cash flows up and down. And then I hit that team. And that was my sustainable business model. Then I went into simple again because I had a child and income decreased and cash flow was up and down again for a while. And then boom, moved into another business model. So that's how it's been.
I'm really inspired by the generosity motives. Really am. That means a lot to me personally. I don't know if anybody else does, but it really does matter to me. So
thank you.
Thank you. I'm stoked about your Art of Money year-long thing, and you will probably see me in it.
Great. Wonderful.
So, anybody listening, all of the links and everything will be in the show notes, but you can find Bari Tessler at baritessler.com, and you can just search The Art of Money on Google or Amazon, and you'll find her and all of her wonderful work. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Yeah.
Isn't she just delightful? So beyond the Bare Naked Bravery adult coloring book, your brave takeaway from today's show is a fabulous book list inspired from today's conversations. We've got a bunch of awesome books on there. So you can go ahead and head over to the show notes, which has all of them listed out for you. We would love to hear about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery. You can find Bari Tessler and myself on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and a lot more. Go ahead and tag us so that we can cheer you on and see what you're up to if you post about anything from this episode. We really, really do want to see how much you agree or disagree with what we say. You can, again, find Bari Tessler and all of the links on our show notes for today's episode. Just go to barenakedbravery.com. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, go ahead and give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. It really does help us out a lot more than it is a hassle for you. All the bravery that you heard today, it deserves to be spread as far and wide as possible. And you, listening right now, are a part of that. If you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, please visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm really looking forward to being with you next week. We have some awesome things in store for you. But until then, I have one message for you. It's this. Be yourself. Be vulnerable. Be brave. Because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.